Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the True Life Podcast. It is Friday. Aloha Friday, everybody. I hope everyone's having a beautiful day. I hope that the world is treating you in a way that you deserve, and the sun is shining, the birds are singing, and the wind is at your back. I got an incredible show for you today with an incredible guest, the one and only Ahva Lenay, the guiding light of Colorado's healing journey. And I hope everyone out there is going to embark with us on this transformative adventure as we explore the world of ceremonial medicine, bioenergetics, did I say that right? And the power of ecstatic healing. Get ready to embark on a profound and soul-nourishing experience with Ahva, a certified bioenergetic practitioner, a certified massage therapist, and the radiant owner of Rhythm Sanctuary. Welcome to a world of well-being, connection, and spiritual growth, everybody. Aloha, Ahva. How are you?
I'm happy. I'm good. I'm excited. I'm nervous. It's a new moment that we've never had before. So I'm good.
Yeah, I know that you are. You're not only good, but inspirational. And for those people listening, we were having a brief conversation where I had mentioned to her in a coy way, be here now. And she had said, George, I was with Ram Dass a few times. And so I thought we'd just begin the podcast with maybe you can share some of those stories. I don't know that story. And I would love for myself, my audience to hear it. So please, if you're willing to share.
Well, that book found its way to me by someone that I just loved and treasured that was a few years older than me at the time. So someone I looked up to, and I just thought that was like the coolest thing to hold in my hand ever. The style was unique even for its time and was so simple. I'm like, be here now. Huh. And I'd already begun on my explorations in the psychedelic realms. So that was something I could relate to on a lot of different levels. Like, no matter where you go, here you are. So I don't know if anyone else had that journey. And so, I just started reading that book. And then I lived in Bellingham. I was a new mom. I was 23 years old, and he was coming to Bellingham to a local bookstore to talk about that book. And he was just coming home from India, where he had reached his great enlightenment with some of his cohorts, as I like to say. And he was talking about the journey in India, and he was talking about the journey from India to Bellingham, and he had stopped off in Hawaii, and it was the first time. So if I was 23, okay, we're talking 40 years ago. It's a long time ago. I had my little baby with me, wide-eyed and just so excited to be in his presence. And he talked about, his experiences in India, which were just so beautiful and so meaningful and relevant to me at the time. And everyone was just like in awe. And he talked about swimming with the dolphins. And I'd never heard of such a thing. And it was his first time, and he'd never heard of such a thing. And he started talking about the psychic connection, how the dolphin could read his mind. It would start to dive down a little ways. And he was like, woohoo. Well, first, the dolphin taught him how to grab the fins so that he could ride with the dolphin. I'm sure that's not acceptable now. I did swim with the dolphins about 6 years ago in the wild, and I thought very much of Ram Dass. So he shared those stories, and he shared other stories, and I could go on about that. But the takeaway was, oh my God, this man, he had no notes. He had nothing to go by, just his heart and his spirit. And you could feel that. And I just thought, oh my God, how he remembers all these things to detail. And it's because he was like reliving them as he shared the story. And I was just so wowed by his presence and his articulate nature and his ability to connect with his audience where they were at. So that was the first meeting. Then the second meeting, I was 44 and I had just gone through a divorce, and it was here in Denver. I live in Denver, and it was at the Mile High Church. And I'd heard he'd had the stroke. So he had just written, I believe, Fierce Love, it was. And he was coming back, and I'm like, oh my God. And I was in such a huge life transition. and that Ram Dass was coming again, I wouldn't miss it. Now here's this crazy teaching. So I got there early so I could find my seat. It's a big venue and everyone is standing along the edges and we're all waiting for Ram Dass. And I'm coming at it with the memory of him in person when I was 23 and I met him. I sat with him for a few, I felt so blessed and seen by him. I'm going to cry thinking about it because, maybe everyone doesn't know, but he's gone now. Then not gone. He's still here now. Um, and on this occasion was very different. They wheeled him out in a wheelchair. And I'll tell you, the room was so quiet, George, you really could hear a pin drop. And there were children, young children in the room. There was just a real intergenerational showing of people and support. They wheeled him out and he sat, and he had the voice, what do you call the thing for the throat? It helped to help him amplify his voice.
Yeah.
But he sat in silence for what seemed like eternity, quite honestly. Maybe it was 5 to 10 minutes. And I thought, oh my God, if anything, with him not even speaking, his presence is even more profound than what really impressed me and wowed me and inspired me when I saw him as a speaker. And I honestly thought he was just going to sit there in silence with all of us for the whole time. And I thought, well, how perfect is that? I get to see the duality of a very beautiful, articulate, engaged speaker of spirit, and see him now where he doesn't even need the words. And that was the big lesson and takeaway. And he did speak and he talked about his book. He talked about first love and all of those things. But for me, the big aha was in those moments of silence. So, and it just came at two like completely treasured times in my life when it steered me into my next evolution. So that's my Ram Dass story. And I have friends who lived with him in Hawaii and took care of him. So I have some other like sweet stories and inklings of what life was there like living with him. And it was just equally as beautiful and meaningful as what I had.
It sounds wonderful. And it's, first off, thanks for sharing. I think those are great ways for people to, no matter where you are in your life, if you're 15, 20, or 40, or 60, or we've all gone through these cycles of change. And I think the way you describe meeting Ram Dass in those particular parts of your life speak volumes of rites of passage and ceremonies and these things that happen to us. And, I think that leads us into kind of, it's a great segue into like, what are you doing now? Like, maybe you can give us a little bit of background. Like, that's a great background story, but maybe give us a little bit of background in what you're doing now and what led you to it, like a little buildup.
Yeah. Well, I was one of those rebels, coming of age in the early 70s who didn't want to conform to anything. I didn't want money. I wanted to barter for everything. I wanted to live off the grid. All of those things. I wanted to focus on spirit, and all that was coming through was all the things that were wrong with the world. Gosh, George, you're just making me cry here.
I love it.
And so at 23, I had my first baby, and I was a single mom, and I wanted to get out of the city, and I had a midwife, and that was pretty unheard of in those days. 1981, actually, now we're talking. And so I moved off grid and I joined an intentional community. And, I was very idealistic, and we were learning from some of our Native American elders about peyote medicine and sweat lodges. The peyote church was alive and well in the Okanagan Highlands where I lived. I built a yurt. I lived in it for 3 years. My second child was born in the yurt right there. And I wanted to live close to the land. For me, it was really about getting in tune with nature. Somehow was going to save my soul, and who I communed with. So I think that the rites of passage I experienced then that were so organic, like I don't know that I even really had a term such as rites of passage.
Sure.
But certainly as my children were born and started to mature, I wanted to provide these meaningful experiences where they would take notice of the big life changes, where they would take notice of the passages that were happening in the world around them. So I would say it was really my children and my own still kind of idealistic childhood innocence that I had preserved that led me into rites of passage. I think another key component was I grew up dancing lessons. You know, I had a single mom, so she kept me busy. I had baton lessons and acrobats and jazz and ballet and tumbling, all the things. And I loved it. I loved all of that. But then when I got older, I wasn't interested in like being a show person and a
Right.
performer. So I dropped it all. And then when I moved into that community, what came through was African dance and drum. And here was traditional teachers from Africa coming through our community, sharing the talking drum, sharing the dances of ceremony, of harvest, of birth, of rites of passage. And so I think that those items combined, you know, living in nature, following the seasons, and having to live with the land. We didn't have power or electricity. You know, we had solar power where we're just kind of moving into that. So we had to learn how to, I had a Pelton wheel for my power when I also lived. I mean, you're going to have to like center me here because you're getting me going on all the
It's
tangents.
perfect.
But all of those things coalesced as I, you know, grew into myself and grew into someone who really cared about the experiences that I was providing for my children and their friends and my community. And so the combination of that is what led into Rhythm Sanctuary. I taught, gosh, I taught at a studio for a long time too, and I just wanted to bring more ceremony and ritual, and that's how Rhythm Sanctuary got started. And it's following somewhat of like the traditional kind of dance passage through the African drum and dance, and I studied with an elder very well known here in this area, Mama Tish, Letitia Williams, who gave me permission to teach these sacred dances and songs. I've studied with incredible drummers and from Ghana and all along West Coast in Africa, and have been blessed to keep the stories alive, to keep the rites of passage alive. And so all rites of passage have great meaning. My eldest granddaughter is turned 13 on February 2nd. And through the community that I host, the Ecstatic Dance, a whole bunch of women got together and created ceremony and dance performance. And we did a rite of passage for her turning 13, where there were over probably close to 400 people in witness at our dance on a Thursday night. And no less than, I'm going to say 16 women, all bringing some element of a gift to steward this beautiful young woman, my granddaughter, into her 13th year as a rite of passage, and really was beautiful. So
Wow.
I hope that gives a little insight,
Yeah. I
but
think
there's
it's beautiful.
thank you. Yeah, it is. It's beautiful and meaningful, and I think that we've really lost a lot of that. There's a resurgence, so I feel really hopeful, and there is a lot coming back around with rites that we have. Beautiful brothers in the community who are doing rites of passage for young men, and I have showed up at some of those processes because they're more than a day on some accounts where they're doing a vision quest, and I get to be the elder woman that they meet with to talk about
Mm.
correct and right relations and things of that nature. And yeah, it all factors in, and I feel honored that I get to be a part of that in our community.
It's fascinating. What goes on at when a girl turns 13? It like or a we'll start with the ceremony with your granddaughter if you don't mind talking about it, or rites of passage for a girl becoming a
Mhm.
woman. It seems to me that there's echoes of it where I grew up, like a quinceañera, or for a boy there's a bar mitzvah. But for most people, there's maybe a car when you get 16 if you're lucky, or you go and get wasted when you're 21. But what does it look like? It seems like there's so much knowledge it should be transferred about a young woman understanding that she is the only person who can bring life into this world. It seems like we're missing this sort of transfer of knowledge from person to person and from elder to the person becoming a woman. Is that the kind of things that may get passed down in a ceremony for a young woman, for a young girl becoming a woman? Or maybe you can talk about that.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm not going to talk about my granddaughter specifically
Sure.
because she'd
Yeah.
be a little bit embarrassed.
Sure.
So I'll talk about kind of more in general.
Yeah.
So for me as a ceremonialist, it would be, well, actually, right now I'm working with a young 15-year-old woman too, who's in a different level of rites of passage in
Sure.
high school and is really struggling and is already struggling with alcoholism and addiction and things of that nature. So that's the next level. But I feel like if we steward our children and we foster them into a culture that supports them, where they know where to turn, where they know who their elders are, what's safe, that we could prevent a lot of what's happening in high school right now. And it really is, it's sad to see. So in general, let's say, go back to say a womanhood rite of passage.
Yeah.
It would start, honestly, I would like to work with clients at the start of the menses for a young woman,
Yeah.
if not even sooner. But when the onset of the menses come is a perfect segue to understand what you're just describing, to understand that every human life is born through the body of a woman. Like,
Yeah.
that's powerful. And it's like, oh, it's not just this messy blood right and all this inconvenience. And I just wanted to play soccer or go swimming. It's like, let's bring the meaning and depth into this and let's share our personal stories. So it would be meeting with the parents to find out, what's the culture of their family, what are their values, what do they want to, for sure bring into the knowledge and the wisdom, steering this young woman forward. Who would they want to be there if, in a ceremony? Are there 3 generations available? Maybe even 4.
Yeah.
We're gonna bring their grandmother in and have that there for them. And likewise, would there be a point where they would sit and talk to a grandfather, maybe not, maybe a trusted elder in the community, and because there's a time also to bridge the gender gap as well, where they have the opportunity to ask maybe hard to ask questions of somebody, from the opposite gender, which is the role I serve, with the young men. So we would sit and then we would create a circle, that would ultimately end in a celebration. So we would sit in a circle, we would share stories, maybe funny ones, maybe serious ones, maybe magical ones, all the aspects depending on who's there in the circle. Maybe some of their friends would be there that they wanted to have present. And there would be, for me, I do meaningful things because I like having, I'm very tactile. I'm a very somatic centered person. So I like to borrow from our native elder traditions, where we create a necklace or a bracelet or maybe a sun catcher. So I would invite all the young women and those attending, the grandmothers, to bring a bead. And this would be a bead that they feel has some meaning to them. Perhaps it's from their strand of pearls that they were given when they turned 16, or maybe it's an African trade bead they found on the ground and it just felt special to them and they've been holding on to it and now they know why. Or so we go around in a circle and then everyone would be having this prayer bead, and then we would pass the string along, and as they tell the story or offer the prayer or the blessing, they string this bead on the strand, and then their whole, it's so,
Yeah, it makes me want to cry. It's beautiful.
yeah, it's so moving. So then all of a sudden they have this beautiful necklace or whatever we've decided to create,
Yeah.
that has this community and the stories reflected in there. And there will be a scribe, who can write down this bead from, great grandma, and this bead from, my friend, and so on and so forth. And they have this like living record of something that they can pick up anytime and remember the story. So that would be an aspect. That's one of the things I often share in like a young woman's rite of passage. And yeah, and then there would be like maybe then we would share food and celebration. We would dance. I have all the wealth of African
Mhm.
dances and drumming, so we would for sure have drumming, and we would for sure dance together to the four directions, and
Mhm.
just like go off and see what she has to share as well. And then I would follow up. I'm thinking of my granddaughter now, and it would be, all right, now we've done this, and I want you to call upon the gratitude. What did you get out of the experience? What stood out for you? Can you please write about that? Often the gift I give is a journal,
Mhm.
because I want to encourage that living record, and
Mhm.
some place to always have to go. And I was a journal keeper for many, many years in those days. I still am, actually. So, and then, follow up, just like a journey, as I know you've been talking to Jotima and all of the team, preparation, the ceremony, and integration is everything. So it's the same with a rite of passage, that it wouldn't even include our plant ally medicines. And I might also do a cacao ceremony,
Mm.
and I might also do a kava kava ceremony. It
Okay.
depends on the age. Like, I'm kind of leaning into the work I'm currently doing with this young woman. I'm leaning into a kava kava ceremony. It's
Mhm.
legal, and it's a wonderful kind of delayering, like, your tongue tingles and something's happening and you're extra alert and awake, and you can have your friends there, and it brings you to the heart, like a cacao ceremony. So those are also aspects that I often weave into these rites of passage. We might even do a camp out, like a
Yeah.
Vision Quest camp out. It just depends on the family, the circumstances, and so on and so forth. So
That's so beautiful. When I'm as you're painting this picture for us to see, I can see not only the images of what can be in that ceremony, but I can have a vision of the relationships that are able to form after and because of that ceremony. When people begin to understand, hey, this is a change in life. This is almost a death and a rebirth for me. This is part of me leaving me behind and becoming this new person. So of course there's going to be changes. Of course there's going to be awkwardness. And when you begin to understand that as an individual or someone, it's like, oh, this is what growing is. And you create a lifetime of growing when you begin to understand that these changes are necessary. They're difficult, but they're meaningful, and we need it to happen. We need it to happen throughout your life. And it's such a great way when I think about ceremonies and rites of rituals, how the elder has already been through them, but yet they get to play a new part as the elder for the first time. And the person going through it gets to play it. And the younger child is like, that might be me one day. And it's so beautiful. And I'm so hopeful that more people will begin to thoroughly understand the need in our society, in our community, in our world, for us to understand that we're one giant organism and we're going through changes, and we can look at ourselves if we can take the time to see it. So thank you for explaining it like that. It's so beautiful to me. Thank you.
yes, you're well, first, can you see me feeling your heart? I am
Yeah,
just,
totally.
yeah, the love is expanding with every word and gesture, George. Um, you reminded me, I didn't quite finish out the thought. The gratitude that's important to form the bonds and the relationships that could be lasting, such as you described, are really crucial. So, that they have some gesture of thanks, even if it's a phone call. But I really
Yeah.
encourage everyone to write a note, to handwrite a letter and send it off with maybe something like a feather. Like, I have quite a collection of feathers, and like something to give back, because I always teach that gratitude primes the way for grace, and
Mm.
grace is that the universe having perceived that we're receiving the gifts that we're given, and if we're grateful for all the things as they show up, even the hard challenges, then we've received the gifts, and we get to graduate into the next reception phase. And so
Oh.
gratitude is super crucial. Yeah, good reminder. I think I'm on silent.
Me
And
too.
that, and you reminded me of something else. I forgot what you said, birth and rebirth. You
Yeah.
spoke of birth and rebirth and death and rebirth. And so when we formulated the group, the women's group that I spoke of, that all collaborated and co-created to create this beautiful ceremony for my granddaughter, we named it. There's such power in naming, and we called it, George, the Nest of the Phoenix. And
Yeah.
I just had a feeling you might appreciate that, because, and we started, and she was present at all the meetings. We met for 8 weeks,
Mhm.
and we went through what we put big papers up on the wall in the dance studio covering the mirrors, and we'd write the stages of the phoenix. Like, if the phoenix was more than a mythical bird, what are the stages? Oh, there's the hatchling, the nestling, the fledgling, and so on, and all these things in between, you know. And then we like got into like the maiden, the mother, and the crone, you know, that's like the trinity. And then all the women are like, I think I was the eldest there. The women are like, you know, there's some like passages missing. We didn't just go from a mother to the crone.
Mhm.
So how about Mother Queen Crone? Well, it's like when we share these works together, we get to discover new aspects of ourselves. And I really want to express that I think it's okay that we, you know, there's all this cultural appropriations concerns, and I think that that is real and needs to be respected and honored and researched. But I think there's also a point where in our culture, you know, in mainstream American, it's important to have the experiences that we have, like for me with African drum and
Yeah.
dance, and then studying with the teacher, and then getting permission to use these aspects to teach, or to, my thing was wanting to teach something called, oh gosh, my brain just went whoop.
Mhm.
I'll tell you in a minute
Yeah.
when that part lands again.
Mhm.
But you know that it's okay to weave with good intention,
Mhm.
and not looking for self credit or taking credit, that we get to weave these different aspects of the journey. So we had women who were, you know, Buddhists, and we had an African, you know, African American woman who was very much a traditionalist, and we got to weave all these to create our new rites of passage, to create a new ceremony that was meaningful. And so I think that that's important too, is that we give ourselves permission to, you know, take from the environment and our organic experience, and weave that into the ceremony.
Yeah. When I think of weave, I think of a tapestry, and I think about everybody playing a part in weaving a new tapestry with a new design and a new color and a new symbol. And there's ways to do it. And part of it is to ask for permission. Sometimes it's to ask for forgiveness if you make a mistake, but the tapestry goes on, right?
That's right. I agree. Yeah. And sometimes just ask for forgiveness.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
whoops. Okay. I'm
Yeah.
innocent, you know.
Yeah.
When we're coming with that pure heart, you know, we just want to lift everything up into the highest elevated frequency,
Yeah.
you know. I think that that there's a permission. If it's not right in our field, we can't go to that elder, or we can't, you know, travel to Africa or India or wherever.
Hmm.
You know, we can seek out wisdom from our elders and our community and our collective field as well.
Yeah. I really admire the way in which it seems to me that there's this echo of the past that's reverberating, and it's causing us to see the world in a new, almost alien, even though it's the way it was saw before. For so many people that have been absent rites of passage or ceremony, it seems like there's this new world emerging, but maybe it's just the old world dying, and we're getting back to a spot where communication is so meaningful and understanding what life is without seeking a giant material possession for your happiness. You know, there's a lot more ways in order to bring meaning into your life than to attach that meaning to something shiny. You know, and I think we're getting back to that. Maybe you could speak to some of that, as far as like you have lived an interesting life and you have gone through different ceremonies and passages, and now you're helping other people. What are some of the patterns that you have seen emerging as of late?
Hmm. Well, there's some big patterns emerging that I'd Well, you can't help but talk about them. I mean,
Sure.
we've gone through so many movements. It's funny because I do unitive justice work too, which is kind of based on Dominic Barter's
Mhm.
restorative justice, which is accepted. It's used in the legal system, and it's often an alternative for families and so on and so forth. So I'm a trained facilitator, so I hold unity circles, and I can't help but think of all that was stirred up with the Me Too movement
Mm.
and things of that nature, consent, and that is alive and well and needing to be addressed. And a lot of times this was arriving for me in my awareness right at the same time medicine ceremonies. It's before we really, legalized here psilocybin in Colorado and so on. So there were still all these underground ceremonies and things that sometimes were a ceremony the first round, but the second round, not so much. The
Mm.
second round, everything sort of because, they were being led by what I call showmen, maybe not shaman.
Yeah.
They didn't have a lineage, no foundation in the lineage and moving forward, not in the best way. So I was facilitating a lot of
Yeah.
those kind of conflict resolution circles around accusations and consent and things of that nature. So what I'm seeing even in the short time is that we are learning to listen to each other.
Mm.
The Me Too movement helped, put a light on a lot of the shadow that was happening. And now, well, last night at Rhythm Sanctuary, for example, and our tagline, by the way, just very much in alignment with what you spoke. The tagline for Rhythm Sanctuary is where ancient wisdom meets modern culture.
Love it.
And so it's wanting to honor the ways of old that, like the phoenix, the pearls that we're gathering and bringing through us in the rebirth. But there's a modern culture emerging at the same time. So how do we, find the lock and key and fit that all together in the best way that can serve consciousness and technology, growing at different speeds and rates and trying to catch up to each other. And last night, here's an example of something that I feel just very moved by what happened. And so at the end of our dance, we have a 2.5 hour, we call it a ecstatic dance ritual. It's a sober space. Um, Anyone would be welcomed in any condition as they entered, but there would never be any kind of imbibing in the
Right.
space or there's always someone who sneaks off to their car for a little puff, or it's Colorado after all,
Right.
but bit by bit, people are catching on that the idea of doing these medicines in these lodges and in these sacred ceremonial ways as a sacrament, that we can't just keep going back again and again and again, because what I learned from my elders is that's disrespectful to the medicine. That's disrespectful to our elder plant allies. We have to integrate what we got from the medicine. And I think that our ecstatic nature, it's organic. It's a birthright, really, in and of itself, when all the circumstances are right. So providing a very conscious music in a very intentionally uh, programmed setting with altars for the masculine and the feminine built every week. So we've been doing this 21 years now.
Wow.
So the container is set, and within the structure of the container, people understand and know how to flow and grow in the container. I hope I'm not getting too far off. I was
No.
going to share how our dance ended last night.
Yeah.
It always has a theme. We respect everyone who participates, but we don't put the DJ or the musicians up on a pedestal and worship them, like a concert. It's all a part and parcel of the whole experience. But at the end, we circle in the beginning, we share intentions, and we circle at the end. And the dance itself is in silence, because we want to foster nonverbal communication. We want to
Mm.
go to the depths of something that might be available in the old way of a trance dance, where we're communing with spirit and we're bringing something through. But from all of us in our sober, clear mind and heart space with the intentions that we set. So at the end of the dance last night, We had our circle. People shared. There were tears. There were laughter. There was laughter. And we always close out with a song. And I had the inspiration. Our theme was that we're all one, that we're not alone, a play on the word. And we introduced it at the beginning, and it seemed to have a lot of meaning. And listening was really a deep part of the medicine last night. Like, listen to the music, listen to yourself, listen to your community, listen to your body. And at the end, a song came through, and we put all the women in the middle, and all the men circled the women. And all the men sang to the women. And then we swapped, and all the women stood on the outside, and we put all the men in the middle, and we sang to them. And the words we sang were, I don't know if I can do it without singing. And I
Sing
didn't
it.
count on that. I didn't count on that. But the words were, brothers, oh sacred brothers, know that we are with you every day, healing, listening. Oh yeah, where did it go? Because it came on my way
Yeah.
driving to the dance. Oh, healing, we are listening to all you're feeling in a holy way.
Mm.
That's what we sang to each other. And over and over and over again, we sang like probably 5 or 6 times. And then we all united in one big circle, and we sang to, well, the invitation was to sing to Mother Earth, and or to speak the name of somebody that you wanted to call unity and healing in with. So most of us sang to Mother Earth, and some people you could hear, grandmother, you could hear beloved, you could
Yeah.
hear names of the people, and we sang for unity. We sang to heal all the wounds and to be together so that we're listening. That was the key, we're listening to what you're feeling. Let yourself feel. We're listening. We're here for that. And that was a really, really beautiful and potent ceremony ending.
It's beautiful. You bring up this idea of dance too, and most people don't think of dance as communication, but it is. It's a real form. If we think about language and words, words are a fragment of language, but so too is dance, so too is symbolism, and all these things together are a real effective way of communicating to each other. Maybe you could speak to the ideas of how dancing is a way in which we can interpret life, whether something is dancing through us or the way you can see people dance is another way to see people move through life, and you get to understand balance, and the way you dance with somebody is the way a relationship can be, and there's dips and there's falls and there's leading and there's stepping on toes, and like there's so many beautiful ways about it, right?
Exactly. I think you just answered your own question. Pretty sure.
Yeah.
All the metaphors you used is what comes alive in a short time, say at an ecstatic dance. Also, I'm a big festival co-producer where we have 10,000 people, 10,000 souls on the ground. And often part of our opening ceremony is an ecstatic dance. And that's it. It's this like condensed time of coming together where we agree that out in the default world, out in that lab of life, we're talking and using our words all the time. And we always start out with something like, hey, how are you today? And sometimes that's a big question. Most of the time, that's a big question. But if you come up to somebody and you're dancing and suddenly there's a noticing in the field, oh, look at that person over there. I'm drawn to their movement.
Yeah.
It's more than. So oftentimes I'll open up the dance by saying, all right, I invite you to close your eyes right now and just, feel into your own inner landscape, just feel to the inside. What's alive for you? Is your belly tight? Is your head full of the day? Like, let's just breathe in and notice, and we'll start there. We just start where we're at, and then it'll be like, okay, now maybe from that place, and it would be more elaborate because, we have 2.5 hours. I don't know how much time we have here.
as much as we need.
Will you dance with me, George?
Of course.
Dance, yes. And then I would say maybe something like, "Oh, I invite you now to just open your eyes, but only into a soft gaze, you know? Let everything be fuzzy around you. Don't focus on the faces or the outfit but let's start and begin to move. Maybe you want to open your palms up so that you can begin to sense energy. Maybe we've even done some kind of like, energetic ball to just sort
Mhm.
of start attuning ourselves and creating that frequency in our space. And then I'll say, here's what I would invite you to do: to pay more attention to the spaces between the bodies, the spaces between you and other, and notice, where are you drawn, where are you pulled. And so often we might start a dance like that, and then there's this permission then somehow to like just kind of shapeshift into a new reality. Sometimes we'll work with, archetypes, or everyone will
Mhm.
bring their own. I'll say, what's the medicine that's called you to the dance tonight? People are, they're like, sorrow, you
Mhm.
know, I've been feeling grief. Or they'd be like, celebration, play, all the things. They go out there and we just put it in the middle and go, okay, all this is available for all of us. And it can show up right alongside whatever is the predominant feeling that you're feeling. But at the end of the dance, I mean, there might be people crying sometimes, but I tell you, it's like that breakthrough tears of joy. So I've seen the power of that ecstatically sober environment make huge changes. People tell us after 21 years, George,
Yeah.
I've heard it all. We moved here because of this community. This community saved me. I was feeling lost and suicidal. I didn't have anyone to turn to, and having this dance, this is our dance church, and so, and then at the end, it's like, okay, what you felt here is a gift. You gave that gift to yourself. We gave it to each other. Can you harness it and bring it out in the world? Is there a way that you can communicate by a gaze, by a gesture, by a hand offered, by a secret offering, whatever the thing is? Like, how do we cultivate this kind of way of being with each other out in the world and amplify? It's like an acupuncture point. I feel it. And then suddenly it just starts to affect the whole system, right there in the building. The people who, so we dance at a place called Sons of Italy. And guess what? Our culture is affecting their culture.
Mhm.
Like they have opened their eyes to like a greater culture than what they foster there in that building. And they're seeing us in all of we're a broad spectrum. I mean, we have, burners, we have, lawyers, doctors. I mean, some of our DJs are doctors and attorneys. It's like it's a full spectrum, and that can be embraced. And it's just a beautiful thing to behold. And then we cultivate it and harness it there, and then do our best to practice and take it out in the world and remember the feelings that we felt and generated through the conscious music and our prayers and our building of the altars. And there's always a way to show up and be a maker or a contributor. And that's a beautiful thing.
It's so beautiful to me, and I I'm the song from Janis Joplin, "Take a Little Piece of My Heart," comes to my mind because I think after going to an event, a festival that has changed you in a way, the next time you meet somebody, like you understand how to give a little piece of your heart to somebody. Maybe you do like a little dance when, "Hey, how's it going? I'm George," or like maybe you hug them, but like you take a little piece of your heart that was given to you at a ceremony, and then you can give even a smaller piece to the next person you meet. And it bonds you to people on a level most people don't understand. But it draws people to you, and it's this gift of giving that you give to someone, even if it's a gesture, if it's a soft gaze, it's something different than a hi, monotone, how are you? Like you breathing life into the other person. The breath of life in some ways is the way we're exchanging information between people. And I'm so enamored with the community that you have and what you've started there and what you've learned there. And like I'm drawn to it. And I know that other people listening to this are probably drawn to it. It's it's fascinating to me. And it seems to me that it's something that I'm hopeful that it's contagious. Do you think it's contagious?
It is absolutely
Good.
contagious. It is beyond contagious. Um, Yeah. So when Rhythm Sanctuary started 21 years ago, it first started in Boulder. I don't know if you I live right in between Denver and Boulder in a
Okay.
little town called, well, not a little town, a little city called Arvada. Although I am looking at a empty field and a beautiful view to the Flatirons and two horses across the street from me. But Boulder, they didn't really have any kind of a dance like that. I mean, you could go to Cleo Parker Robinson's and study African and take a class or do something at Naropa or, on a college level. But this really wasn't a thing. And there was a barefoot boogie that had been going on in Boulder, which was like, you know, really fun, a really fun way to get together, not very intentional. And also contact improv has been very, very much of a culture. And
Mhm.
they all come to the ecstatic dance because we have healed professional dancers. Last night, someone told me, "Oh my God, I quit dancing so long ago because I was just so over the programming and the conditioning and the dieting and the this and the that,
Mm.
and I haven't danced this free in forever." So started to say, right now I can count in Denver 1, 2, 3, 4 ecstatic dances offered weekly, and Boulder has at least 5.
Nice.
So it's a growing thing and it's been around. Honestly, when I started Rhythm Sanctuary, I didn't even realize I didn't know what ecstatic dance was. I was coming from being, you know, a a dance teacher in a studio teaching something called Nia, which was a beautiful thing, but it didn't have the spiritual or ceremonial aspect to it. I mean, you could bring in the emotional healing and it was the healing arts, the martial arts, and the performance arts. It was a combination of those. And yeah, I was just really longing for something that, we could build ceremony and ritual together as a community because not many of us were going to church exactly, and so it really has evolved into a dance church. I would say it really does feel like a dance church, and the music is the minister, and all of us are the congregation. We all take turns, stepping into our ideas and leadership roles, and
Mhm.
it's very empowering to individuals and the collective.
Yeah, it's sometimes I wish we would think more about healing the community instead of focusing on the sickness of it. I think in a previous conversation with Moksha Journeys, we were talking about how healing can be contagious. And it sounds to me on some level like that's what's happening when people get together and they understand that it's the suffering that we all share. These are the times that we need each other. These are the times that bring us together. But so many of us suffer in silence, and it just causes so much heartache and distress between the family. But suffering is a call for us to come together, isn't it?
Oh, I believe so. You reminded me of a story once, from the dance, after it was all said and done, and, I have my eye on everybody, and this older gentleman came in, and I thought, "Oh my gosh, you know, hope he's not too shocked. Could we have some chairs on the side?" And I kept my eye on him, and he was kind of moving on the outside and this and that, and he never really fully got into it, you would say, right? So at the end, we always circle up and we have like a share back from the journey where people are encouraged to speak about some little pearl or some insight that maybe rose up for them. And, like I said, I had my eye on him. I just wanted to make sure he was like comfortable and, you know, just have my eye in case I needed to step in and offer anything, water, a cup of water or something. And at the end, he spoke. And he said, "Well, I'm here from Texas visiting my daughter. And I'll tell you, she brought me here kicking, dragging me, screaming. I put up every resistance I had, but she wouldn't let me say no." And then he started to cry. And he said, and I can't tell you how grateful I am that she drugged me here, because tonight I held my daughter in my arms for the first time since she was a little girl. And he was just crying, and I'm like, "Oh my god," like, so little stories like that,
Yeah.
and on every end of the spectrum, I mean, literally life and death, and, it was just so beautiful because I thought, "Oh gosh," "he's probably not enjoying himself very much," and he came out with that beautiful share, and so you don't know what's gonna happen. It's another lesson in letting the judgment go and
Yeah.
the open heart and, allowing everyone to have their own personal experience and not walking away thinking you understood or knew what that was.
It's like that old saying, dance like nobody's watching and love like you've never been hurt. It's
That's
like manifesting it right there.
you get that opportunity. You get that opportunity. It's a beautiful thing. Oh my goodness. And I
Yeah.
see, George, in your world, I see that you're going to a festival in the near future. Is that true?
I
It was on your podcast, and I looked it up. It said you're attending, but maybe you were just supporting attending.
I might be like I know that I've been attending a lot virtually, like listening to people
Okay.
and going there, and I need to come to a festival. I should come to Denver and come to an ecstatic dance festival. I need to get out and do it. I've Hawaii is such a beautiful place, and in some ways I feel like every conversation has been a journey for me, and I get to live it like that, but I need to get out and experience it more. And I think that's the next phase for the podcast and growing, is getting out and going to places and actually doing the podcast from places and getting to embark on it. And yeah, I do think that everybody in their life should go through these particular, whether it's a concert or a festival. But I think early in life, I know when I graduated high school, I went to a Dead show. That's how old I am. Right? I remember and it was late. It was in the 90s. But I drove my Volkswagen bus up from San Diego to Autzum Stadium in Oregon. And I'll never forget, we drove up, me and my buddy Craig, and we parked way out in this field. And we had gotten there like a day early. And I'm like, dude, there's nobody here. What's going on, man? It's like a day before. It's supposed to start tomorrow. And I remember I parked my bus way out in this field. And I woke up the next day and it was just colors, people everywhere. And I'm like, this is amazing. You're walking around and meeting people. But it was in some ways, I felt like it was a mix between the hero's journey and the prodigal son. Like you're just out meeting people and there's all these people your age and you're having these fascinating conversations, and albeit maybe some of them naive and idealistic, but so rewarding and gratifying and learning, and like, oh, these people get it, and you can make lifelong friends, and you realize that there's a whole cohort of people, like you like to say, out there desperately trying to experience life and looking for people just like you. And whether it's the music that calls to you, like the sirens called to Odysseus, or if it's the gaze of a stranger that's seductively pulling you towards them in a way because they have a secret to tell you. They do. There's so much out there for people to live, and I want people to experience, and there's outlets. And yeah, I think that if people find themselves listening to this and they're being called to a festival somewhere in there, that's the call to adventure, the call of the wild, as John Steinbeck would say. But yeah, so this is something that you do every single week that goes on there.
Every single week, except we don't meet on Thanksgiving.
There you go.
So every Thursday. And you know what I just did, George?
What's that?
I just flew to Florida for 6 days, where
Nice.
I have 2 granddaughters, 1 and 8, and their mothers. And I said, well, if I'm coming to Florida, it would be kind of fun to create a more memorable experience. And maybe there's a festival.
Yeah.
So we found the Roots Revival Bluegrass Festival that was 4 days long. And also their godmother flew out. So there was 5 females. It was, wait, the godmama, the 2 mamas, the 6 of us.
Mm-hmm.
We created a beautiful camp. We called it the Goddess Grove because we could.
Yeah.
And there were lots of funny jokes about that. When you're out and you're camping, the G was fun to play with. We
Mm.
became the gassy gaggle of like food,
Right.
we're camping, you can build a fire. We're sharing that culture with our children. I mean, you can really have a mystical experience at a festival. The music is uplifting, people joining together, dancing are uplifting truly the vibration. The frequency is a whole different level of frequency than we often can experience just in our quote ordinary reality out in the world. And those were the best 4 days at the festival, 4 nights, 4 days, going to music, going to the kid camp, creating art with the grandchildren. Well, the 1-year-old, not so much. For her, it was a very great opportunity for socialization because she
Mhm.
hasn't really had that socialization with others her age, and it's a family event. And it was just so beautiful. And the magic, like they're all like, why is there so much more magic here? That's what my 8-year-old was saying. Why is there so much more magic here? Like you could go to a fire. This is an experience I had at a festival once, and it was a big fire kept all night. So when I host my zone at the Arise Music Festival, the one with 10,000 people, we create Wisdom Village. And it's in festivals, it's a sort of microcosmic,
Right.
sampling of all of humanity. So you got people that are, out there with their drugs, and then there's alcohol, and then there's the sober yogis up on the hill, in the yoga temple, and so on and so forth. But at Wisdom Village, it's a sober zone. And again, anyone is welcome in. But if you're coming in with a beer in your hand, we're inviting you to leave that at the gate or come back
Mhm.
when it's done. We keep a fire 24/7 the whole time. We have trained fire keepers in a traditional way. So it's not a fire where you'd come and smoke a cigarette or have a drink. It's a
Right.
storytelling, a prayer, and a ceremonial fire. Anyway, one time the fire was so big and the circle was just layered with people, and a chant got started, and then the chant broke off into like scatting and this and that, and it went all night long. And I was having so much fun with it. And I was on one side of the fire, and every once in a while I'd let some kind of Scooby-Doo out, and then way on the other side of the fire, I'd hear some masculine voice, like literally mirroring back my same thing. And then we came to recognize each other's voices. And this went on for hours, amidst the singing and whatnot that was going on. And by the end of it, as everyone's fading off, I'm like, I have to go see who is that person. And that's how we found each other, by like a little call and response, and it was just so fun. And he was there with his girlfriend. And so it wasn't like I don't have a romance story attached to it, but
Right.
I do. It was
Right. Right.
just such a beautiful romancing of the heart, a courting of the soul, if you will. It was just so beautiful. And
Mhm.
you're not getting that, when you go downtown to go shopping or to the grocery store. It's like only the set and setting, as we hear so much about, can provide that kind of mystical and magical experience. So I just want to encourage people to give it a try and go with your family members and see what can happen. It's not that much.
That is beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, that should be mandatory. Like, and this brings us in some ways. That's a rite of passage or a ceremony, like a family rite of passage. Hey, we're gonna go do this thing together, And so much of that has been farmed out to going to a movie or
That's
going out to dinner or we the degradation of the ritual. Maybe the rituals are still and always will be with us, but we have seemed to lack the intention and the power and the beauty and the imagination behind them.
Mhm. Well, we actually decided to go on a little hike, all of us, to do a ceremony at the river, because there
Nice.
was a beautiful river through the Suwannee live oak zone is where we were. And it was really beautiful. We went around in a circle. We spoke about little events or things that we noticed that kind of made us curious in the festival. That was one aspect. My granddaughter, the 8-year-old, and I had gone out, and one of our rituals was shopping at different booths and meeting the artists. And we met this man in his booth, and he was crocheting and knitting, and he'd made all of these little resin beads and had these little tin boxes. And we got the idea while we were visiting how fun it would be to buy one, and then at the ceremony, she could give the ones she picked out to each of her godmother, her mamas, and so on and so forth. And we had a beautiful ritual. You know, it lasted 45 minutes. And then we went down to the water, and we all put water on each other and bathed our feet in the water and hiked back. And that's a memorable experience, you know? And I think that my granddaughter Scarlett, who's 8, oh my God, the wisdom that came out of her, and all of us sitting, giving her our full attention, we were all shocked. Like, you have that kind of emotional insight right now? Like, she's taking responsibility for herself and her share and why this thing was meaningful to her, and she's blowing us all away. And I'm thinking, well, when it's my turn to talk, I only hope I can sound as smart as her. I mean, you know, as true as her. It's a beautiful thing. So yeah, I want to encourage families to make ceremony wherever they are, you know. The barbecue. Can you
Mhm.
have a prayer before you break bread and share the food? Can the little ones lead it? Could it be silly? Could it be, you know, like we just start weaving it into all the experiences, and pretty soon we're just walking our prayer with every step.
Yeah, I can't in my mind, I can imagine what it's like for a young woman or a young man at the age, I don't know, pick 8 just for that example, and imagine them surrounded by people and their family and they admire, and they have the spotlight where they can share some wisdom, and how that must make them feel, and how that would they'll never forget it for their life if they get to be the leader for a moment and understand that everyone around them respects them instead of, you know, being in some schools where they're, taught authority, do what you're told, you're taught this unconditional sort of, I don't know, Prussian model of education where you can grow up and be an obedient worker.
Mm.
There's so much more to life than
No,
that.
you're reminding me of more moments from the festival where we empowered, Scarlett is her name, Scarlett Grace. And, you know, they have schedules and there's kids workshops and this and that. And so I'm like, well, today let's just go out without a schedule. Let's follow our impulse, our intuition. Let's see where
Yeah.
it brings us. Scarlett was all about that. I'm like, okay, Scarlett, you're the leader. Cause literally we had the wagon with the 1-year-old and all the,
Hmm.
you know, accoutrements a 1-year-old needs, and the godmama, and the, you know, we're all together as a parade. People said great things to us about, you know, what a delight it was to see 3 generations and so on and so forth. And um, just all added to the magic of the moment. And Scarlett would be walking, and then, you know, she'd maybe kind of forget for a minute. And then I'd say, well, what are you feeling? Where's the magic? Where's your intuition pulling you? And she's like, not yet, not feeling it yet. I'm like, "Okay." And then all of a sudden she's like, "There, down there. Do you hear that music?" Because, it was such a musicians festival that all people had all these little campfires and whatnot, and you could go, it's in the culture. I'd never been to this festival before, but it's in the culture that you can build a fire and have a little music circle, and everybody's welcome. There's, you know, you just join in. And she'd pull us off, and then suddenly we're meeting somebody and they're talking about the thing that's like next on our list, and you know, nobody even shared the notes. You know, it's like, wow, okay, good job, Scarlett. You know, like, okay, who's next, you know? And then we're all happy to let each other lead and follow, and tune into that sense of impulse, you know, that the universe has sparked for us out there, you know.
I
It's
do.
beautiful. Yeah.
Gosh, it's so fascinating to think about living life in a way that is meaningful, and obviously everyone's has a path that they're on, and you may not be able to come completely off of your path, but sometimes taking this little side trail for an excursion is what allows you to stay on that path later, right? It kind of really revives your soul.
Exactly. like I was saying, at the end of the dance, it's like, how can we harness this
Mhm.
energy, this feeling, and how can we amplify it out in the world? And I think, we don't have the kind of culture and lives where we just get to go out the front door every day and follow our intuition. We're jumping on highways and doing traffic and going to jobs that we may or may not love, and so on and so forth. But George, I think you hit the nail on the head. If we can take these little excursions and turn them into what we're longing for, connection to earth. It was really important that we did a festival where we got to camp outside, and
Mhm.
be together, out of our homes and out of the normal programs that we run. It's so different here. I wake up and it's like, oh gosh, I gotta go pick the tomatoes. Oh, I gotta, actually I have a pretty dreamy situation here. I love all the things I have to go do.
Yeah.
But not everybody, school and homework and all those things. And we had drama before leaving. There was all this work that had to get done so she could miss the 2 days of school. And
Mhm.
in my mind, as the Oma Ava, the grandma, for me it was all about the grandchildren, and also just fostering that sense of family and what else is possible than the ordinary day to day. And the more you have the opportunity to do that, I think then the more you can build it into the ordinary world in your household, going to school. It's going to, reflective listening. That's a tool
Mhm.
from the unity circles that I host. And we had a circle, there was a meltdown during it wasn't all like
Mm.
what they say, unicorns and rainbows. There were moments, somebody had to pick up the litter and do the things and the chores, and it was cold or
Mhm.
whatever. And so then it's like not being heard or not feeling like they're contributing. And we just had to sit down and then listen reflectively and say, okay, it's not like what I interpret. I hear you saying, Scarlett, what I hear you saying is that I'm only seeing the bad things that you're doing, and I'm not seeing the good things that you're doing. And I'm
Mhm.
missing out on the fact that you just told me you entertained your baby sister and nobody else was, and we reflect back to them, and then they're heard, and then they
Yeah.
can move on. And so we had that opportunity too. And that is going to affect their day-to-day dynamics that they have. We all get stuck in those patterned ruts of
Mhm.
communication and the judgments or the assessments we have of each other. Oh, she's lazy, or she's going to put that off, or whatever. I'm talking fast now. I'm really getting into this here.
Yeah.
but but I think that's it. Let's disrupt the pattern. Let's disrupt the norm as much as we can until that becomes the norm. And then I feel like what's possible after we've started to, as you said so eloquently, to weave this new picture from all the experiences that each one of us is bringing to the tapestry, maybe something that we haven't even dreamed of yet is possible. Like, I mean, I think it's happening all the time on that level. But it's hard. There's a lot of struggle for families, the economics, and you just name it. So many of our systems are kind of imploding. And I mean, school feels so military to me right now. I just tapping into my 13-year-old granddaughter's school and my 8-year-old granddaughter's school. It's just, gosh, there's so many cautions that have to be looked to, and I get that. But boy, I think they're missing a lot of the fun I had, and a lot of the options that I had to create art and for social activities and things like that. I mean, I think it's a more challenging time than when I was young.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's when the world is on fire around you, it's important to have a place where you can be safe, whether it's a ceremony or a relationship that you understand, you can learn from. And yeah, I think and maybe that's why the world is sort of echoing the gosh, there's a great book called it's not The Invisible Landscape. It is I can't think of the name of it right now, but it talks about it's an archaic revival. And in some ways I love the sound of that, and not archaic as a pejorative, but archaic as in the ways that got us here. Like we need to the same way the Renaissance was a revival, so too is this sort of an archaic revival of ceremonies. Like, look, we're going through a time the same way a young woman, a young girl, or a young boy becomes a man, the same way a man or a woman becomes a parent, and the same way a parent becomes a grandparent, so too are we moving into a new time in the planet, right? And it does look like chaos, it does look like death, but so does birth. I mean, people who have seen the miracle of birth, you don't know if is this person dying or I don't understand what's going on here.
All that
And you
screaming.
wouldn't, yeah, there's blood and there's screaming. And the truth is, like, that's why they call it a miracle, because children can die at birth all the time, and so can the mother. And I think that's where we are right now as a society. It's like, okay, this is a very important time. We're going through some big things right here. Are we all on board? And do we have the right teachers over here? And what about the people that are dying without passing on their knowledge? It seems to me like that's happening on some level too, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a lot. I just need to let that land for a second. No, it's a lot, and all thoughts that I've had,
Yeah,
it's really important. And I like it. The name of the festival that we went to was Roots Revival.
I love it.
I love the synchronicities, and
Yeah.
you don't know what's going to touch somebody. A girl came up to me after the dance last night and she goes, "I have to tell you," she goes, "I I met you, but I didn't meet you, but you spoke at the big dome at the Arise Music Festival." And she goes, "Something happened and I've never forgotten you as a result." And I'm like, "Oh
Awesome.
no, what's that?" And well, you were on stage and you tripped over a cord and it was like really awkward. And she said, "But you said, 'Oh my goodness, doesn't spirit have a funny sense of humor?'" And she goes, "When you said that, it flipped a switch in my head about what it meant to be a public speaker." And I thought, "Oh my God, you could just be yourself." And that's the same feeling I had with Ram Dass. It was like he's just himself up there, and then she went on to say how she'd often wondered, she remembered the time because she was pregnant and her kid was like 7 now, and that she'd often wondered how she would ever find me again. And synchronistically, a friend of hers, because she lived about almost 2 hours, she lived in Fort Collins, said, "Oh, you need to come to this ecstatic dance." And she goes, "Can you imagine my surprise when it was the woman who tripped over the cord and changed my life forever?" And I'm just like, "Good story." But yeah, I think I'm spinning a little out there. I'm not sure, but I'm with you. I
Yeah.
just I it's like during COVID, I really didn't imagine that we could create rapport and that we could connect in the same way. And it is different when you're heart to heart, eye to eye, and in
Sure.
person. But I feel you so strongly, and I'm feeling the amplification of your excitement and the beautiful message that you have and that you're sharing. And I'm just so happy to be sitting here in this conversation with you right now. Thank you.
Yeah. I noticed that you use the word synchronicity instead of coincidence. Like, maybe you can tell people what the difference is there.
Oh, of course, I have a story about how that
Imagine that.
started. I was invited by a friend do you know about, like, the Mayan calendar, the 13 moon calendar? Are you familiar with this?
I know 2012 was like the Mayan calendar, but that's
Right,
kind of all
well,
I know.
the Mayans have, these day keepers,
Okay.
and they keep a calendar that's 13 moons. And 13 moons versus 12 months that were created by the King Gregory, the Gregorian
Hmm.
calendar, because the natural time calendar has 13 moons in it from year to year. And that accommodates one day they call Vayab, which is their day out of time. It's a
Mm.
day it's just the day out of time. It's in July. And that's like a sacred holy day for all of these Mayan day keepers. They're called day keepers. So I was curious about the from 2012. I was
Yeah.
13, curious about what that meant. And I had a friend who was really into it, and he sponsored myself and 5 other people to go to this place called Yapomera, which is the belly button of the world, it translates to, where these Mayan day keepers were keeping the days. And it was 13 days. They had 13 lodges all set up that represented each of the moon phases of the 13 moon phases. Because in the Gregorian calendar, we have to have daylight savings time, leap year, all these different things in that Gregorian calendar, was so King Gregory could collect taxes and the Catholic Church could do the things that they needed to do for their religious hall, all of that. So I was just really curious what else was out there. Well, so when I went, they mostly spoke Spanish, which I didn't, but thank goodness our sponsor, he did speak Spanish, so I could get a lot of things interpreted. But they talk a lot about something they call synchronic order. Okay, synchronic order, synchronicity. And that was like kind of my big takeaway from my 13 days in Yapomera, the belly button of the world, where one of the ceremonies was actually lowering yourself into a big hole that was the belly button of the world on a rope and letting the earth suck you in to her belly button. Yeah, I didn't do that, but I was a witness. 3 of my friends from the party did it. To their fingertips. You see their fingertips. I'm like, oh my God, can we pull them out? So synchronic order, to the best of my understanding, is when your mind and your heart and your spirit and soul are all in alignment, and then everything is a synchronicity. You're never in the wrong place at the wrong time. There's no such thing as a coincidence because you're exactly where you're meant to be at every time. So it's funny that you say that, because I wasn't even aware that I was doing that, but that's where I got it, was going and studying with these elder Mayan day keepers and experiencing the 13 moon lodges and Viab, the one day out of time. And that was such a magical trip. We're going to have to get together on another occasion so I can tell you about the Orubus experience I witnessed firsthand in person on like the 4th day, and the assignment from the shamanic elders and whatnot. I saw a snake eat its tail.
Whoa.
I saw a snake eat its tail. And I'm
Let's
like,
talk about it now. Let's hear it.
that's what, yeah, because there I am giving it
Right?
all
Here we
away.
are.
I'll have nothing to say next time.
Please. We're just scratching the surface, I think.
Yeah. Well, the assignment was to find a rock and to bring it to the sweat lodge and to imbue our prayer into the rock. And so we were all scavenged about looking. And one of the gals, a younger gal from our party, I hear a scream. And David, our host, goes running over, and the chief, he goes running over. We're all running over to see like what it is. And she's like, a snake. And David's like, what kind of snake? I don't know. It's a snake. It went right over my feet. And so we're all there now. And she's like, it was right over there. And then we see a little rustle in the grass. And then David, who goes by the name Starbear, which is so appropriate for him, he's like all about the stars. Which actually, okay, coming back to center and the snake and the young gal. So we're all there and we're like, David's got a stick. And then he's like, oh my God. And there it was in the infinity pattern, the tail in the mouth, the snake, supple as it comes and laying right there. And the chief went over and he picked it up with 2 hands under both of the circles and brought it back to the sweat lodge and told her, yeah, you don't need to get a rock. This'll do. Like, this will do. This is your prayer right here. And I was like, because you see that ancient symbol so frequently. And I'm like, I had no idea that was a real thing. Anyway, I don't know if I pronounced it right. I know how to spell it, but I don't know how to speak it. The Orubus, Ourubus, Oribus. I can't.
Yeah.
But
I think people get it. And like the the pronunciation is just a symbol of the symbol. So I think that saying it and showing it is
Okay.
right. It's
Good
fine.
point. Good point.
Yeah. You know, time is a weird one. I remember thinking when I was a younger man, like, why is an 8-sided stop sign called a octagon, but October is the 10th month? And why is Deca 10, but December is the 12th month? Like, I was just like, this makes zero sense. And like, you start thinking about stuff like that, and you can't help but start going, oh, it's all made up. It's all made up. No one knows. It's all made up. Like October's the stop sign's 8 sides. October's the 10th month. Everyone,
Come
look
on,
what's
that's
going
not
on here.
right.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. And I think it's just a world, like, if you just take time, sometimes it may come to you in a heightened state of awareness, or it may come to you after a trauma, or it may just come to you one day when you're driving somewhere or waking up out of bed. But these insights are there for everyone to see. And once you start pulling on that thread, you're like, you start looking behind the curtain. And then the more you look, the more you see, and the more you're drawn to. And it's as if someone's calling you down the path. Like, hey, come here, I gotta show you something.
That's
You guys hear that?
exactly right. That's exactly right. Well, now I'm hearing of your childhood, I'm having a little insight how you got to be who you are right now. That curiosity, it's such a gift,
It is.
and as long as we can really foster curiosity in our mind, I think it's so much easier to stay open to what else is possible. 13 moons? What?
Yeah.
What? The Gregorian calendar is made up by a king? I'm
What?
like, to collect taxes? What?
Hmm.
Like, that makes no sense. I mean, I'm sure
Yeah.
there's more to it than all of those, but sometimes I
That's
don't
enough.
delve too deep.
Mm,
Exactly. That's enough.
yeah.
Moving on.
Well, it's enough to begin that investigation that can last a lifetime. And the truth is, like, we think of people like Elon Musk, or I don't know, there's all these people that we're told are genius, but the truth is genius surrounds us. We're all genius. If you just take time to have the things revealed to you in a way that you can go out there and teach people, like, everyone is a genius. If they just take time to realize it, if they just take time to sit with themselves and let the information be revealed to them, then they would have an invention, and they would have a story, and they would have a fact. Whatever.
Thank
Everyone is
you.
genius, right?
That's right. And Jyoti Ma so frequently talks about the genius of our soul,
Mhm,
that we all have it. And like, let's just get to the genius. Like, that's all you need.
mhm,
Just trust that your soul is genius, that you're genius, that we can move in those waves of our own genius. And when
mhm,
genius meets genius, what's possible? And when like a collective of that energy meets what's possible. I mean,
mhm,
it's like, and as far as healing, I think
mhm.
you spoke of it, in the terms of being contagious,
Yeah,
back to like an ecstatic dance or an experience of that
yeah,
nature. And there comes that, like, if it's acupuncture, it hits that like critical mass point
yeah.
where, yeah, we're just exploding. It's beyond contagious, it's like we're sparking it in each other, and now it's just what is. And so then what's next? That's what I'm so curious about. If we're just always meeting genius with genius, then what gets to happen? What gets to
Yeah.
happen next that I haven't dreamt of yet, and that I haven't even like had a concept about, or like, what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting that you point that out. Like, sometimes meeting other people and seeing the qualities in them are a mirror image of the qualities in you. And I was speaking with the lovely Mrs. Terranova about being in a circle and ceremony, and getting to see people. And the people that facilitate those particular ceremonies, yourself, the team at Moksha, and so many people that I've spoken to, on some level, it's getting to, you know, be part of the illness and the remedy for that person that they're doing the ceremony for. Because I think when you sit with someone who's going through a particular issue, the only way to help sometimes the best people that can help them are people that have been through that issue. And when you're in a ceremony, like, you're in this thing together. So you're able, the person that's in pain is able to give some of that pain to someone, back to giving your piece of heart to somebody, and maybe you could speak to some of that about what we've spoken about so far has been a lot of things, but the part of the ceremony where you're doing rites of passage. But what about different types of ceremonies or ceremonies where you can help people get through difficult times and other kinds? Maybe you could speak to some different types of ceremonies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I want to come up with that perfect example somehow. But I think for me, in what you're describing and asking, the best ceremony has space.
There you go.
The best ceremony is it's a collective field where I'm not coming as the facilitator
Right.
thinking I even know everything that's going to happen. Oh, A, B, C, D. Like at Rhythm Sanctuary, there's a container and there's certain things that can happen in the container. But sometimes, like we always save the DJ thanks for the very last thing. But then there's that person who didn't somehow quite get the message that the share time was for something personal. And they're like, and how about that DJ, everybody? And then suddenly you're not in the ceremony.
Yeah.
But it's like, you might have to take into account that they've never spoken in public before. I mean, the mystery, we have to make space for the mystery to move through us so that we can see what wants to be revealed through the soul of the individual. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like I'm trying to relate it to moksha journeys and, holding space for the ceremony. Oh, whoops. Speaking of, that's my granddaughter. So sorry, I didn't silence that part. That was Scarlet Grace.
Synchronicities, right? We're thinking about her.
And so I'm thinking about, okay, well, we'll start with the circle and we'll end with the circle. That might be all I know. And we'll light a candle.
Yeah.
And well, maybe since it's a medicine ceremony, we'll find out what their intentions are. And maybe everybody has a blessing to give or some prayer or, a spoken word from the Radiant
Yeah.
Sutras or Hafiz, or, something of that nature. And we'll just go from there and then we'll see what wants to arise. And it's like we're human, we can't help but have our assessment of how we think it'll go, like,
Right.
oh, this person is not even going to participate because this is too woo-woo for them or whatever. But if we hold open space, if we create a lot of room in the container and we arrive with love and acceptance and a welcoming of the great mystery that we in the unknowable, we can't foresee it, just maybe that's enough space for somebody to come in and surprise you with the deepest
Yeah.
reveal, and maybe a reveal that they never even were conscious of before, but because of the space held and the circle and the love and the blessing. Is this answering your question a little bit? It's a
Yeah.
different kind of ceremony than a rite of passage for, say, a young girl in her menses or coming into womanhood, or a marriage, or a divorce is even a rite of
Yeah.
passage.
Yeah.
All of those different ways, they're going to have kind of certain aspects in common that you're going to want to address. Maybe forgiveness if there's divorce, or acceptance, or speaking intentions, moving on, especially when children are involved. But for a medicine ceremony, for me, first, it's all about what spirit gonna do.
Mm-hmm.
You know? It's like, okay, I'm led and wow, I got this hit to, you know, bring this seashell. I mean, I'm looking over at my altar to bring a
Right.
bell. I got
Right.
this hit to bring a bell, and I haven't brought a bell, but I'm gonna bring the bell. And you bring the bell, and then, maybe the person you least expect just picks that bell up and rings it, and then all of a sudden there we go. The
Yep.
ceremony's taken a turn that you couldn't have crafted on your own, but you followed the impulse to bring the bell, or, the whatever the thing it was, or the photograph, or, so I think space and allowing for the mystery to weave you all together, to show up in an unknowing way. I don't know what's going to happen, but here's some elements. Let's speak to the four directions, or let's just speak to the water, the fire, the earth, and the air. let's see what happens if we just acknowledge that we're all of that. The fire is lit in that woman. Oh, wow. Now that you mention air, like, whoa, I had this experience where I was, sitting on the edge of a cliff, and I just had the temptation. The wind was so strong to lean forward and see if it could hold me. And I did, and it did. I mean, I actually had an experience like that, but you just one word is all the spark mystery needs to bring you into, you know, the next level of your own journey, the next level of your own understanding of where you've been and what it means for the moment that you're in and where you might be going, and you just don't know what it's, I mean, who'd have thunk tripping over a chord
Right.
on a stage and then just laughing it off was going to change a woman's life. She said she speaks publicly now. Like that, she said, that's what she said. She goes, it flipped a switch, and she did that. She goes, it flipped a switch and it changed my life. And I became not the bottleneck that was so nervous and afraid to speak anymore. I always would think of you tripping over that chord,
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, that worked. I mean, who knew? I wouldn't have planned it that way.
Yeah.
you know.
Right.
But you just don't know. So I think really weaving space for mystery to inform you for the beauty of unknowing.
I love that. As you're speaking about it, most people who have had like a psychedelic experience have often described a feeling that is undescribable and it's ineffable in some ways. They wish they could bring it back, but they can't. But in some ways, it's this lack of language that the ceremony expresses in a way that's ineffable as well. And I think you did a good job of explaining it in that you don't know what's going to happen. If someone rings that bell, it's the same feeling you get at that heightened state of awareness, but it's another connection of language in some way. It's the acting out of spirit in some way. Like I've never thought about that before, but yeah, it speaks to that, right? Like, wow, yeah, that's the next part of it. If you're alone and you find yourself on this journey and you experience something that's ineffable, maybe that's the point in time where if you were around somebody, something would happen, and that's the space, right? It's magical to think about. There's so many directions. It blows my mind.
Yay! Yeah, and setting an intention is not to be underestimated,
Right,
especially in those kinds of
right.
scenarios, because you're laying the foundation for the mystery to operate.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, for me, I just think of it, I want to create beauty. What's that? Oh, some flowers, you know, a deck of cards. We'll often have like a oracle deck I
Yeah.
bought my granddaughter a deck of cards. Somebody wrote a oracle deck for children, and it's just so beautiful. And she picked a card and she's like, what is the meaning of this? I'm the black jaguar. What is that? And then we just kind of get into the description, and then all of a sudden, she is like living into the archetype of stealth and strength and empowerment and courageousness and nurture. All these things are a part of the life of, like, she drew that card. And it was like, and it was also really empowering for her family to see her in that light, but she began to embody it just through the suggestions. She picked that card. That
Mhm.
was her card. She had a thought about, what do I need to know? And it was all about the Black Panther or the jaguar, and the medicine that it brings. And suddenly she could imagine herself greater than she had.
I think that is such a poetic piece for people regardless of their age to do is imagine yourself better than you have, or imagine yourself better than you can. Like that might be the medicine right there that can take people to a good place when they're at a place that might not be so good. Maybe that's the reason why we're not at a good place right now is we've lost our imagination.
Mm, I think there's some truth to that. Yeah. Well, we're just inundated with the
Yeah.
the daily list of
Yeah.
survival. I
Yeah.
mean, we're
Yeah.
just so many just treading water, keeping afloat, or working so hard at, the life we want to create for ourselves, or the legacy we hope to leave behind, that it's hard to imagine anything different. Unless you go to festivals or
Yeah.
ecstatic dances,
Yeah.
or
Right.
or
Right.
sit with George Monty on his True Life podcast. I
That's
mean,
it.
I
Just a
tell
spark.
you, my heart is amplified a thousandfold.
It's that spark. And in some ways, I think that you, it's that spark that everybody has in them, and you can change the way you feel as fast as you can change what you're focusing on. Sometimes you need to go to a ceremony, but you don't have to. You can go up to your bedroom, or you can go downstairs and see something you love, and that can be the spark. Your cat can jump right into your lap and come and say hello, and it's fascinating. But before I let you go, this has been a wonderful conversation, by the way. And I told you
Oh,
before we started, like, this is gonna be one of those ones, right? Like, it's how it always happens. It's how
if
it
you
always
hadn't
happens.
said that set the tone, like, because I was nervous. I'm like, what if he asked me about something I don't know? Like every time
I know.
it's
Yeah.
like, I don't know. And then you said that, and I was like, it's gonna be okay.
Yeah. I know. I knew exactly. I'm like, oh, it's gonna be epic. Like,
It's
it always starts like this.
the
Yeah.
levity you brought. Because literally right before you typed that, I'm like, oh, it's not meant to be. Okay, like, shut that down, you know. And I'm like, wait. And then, or the worst fear, it's like, oh, he doesn't really want to talk to me. He's just sent me a dud link. And I'm like, nope, okay. You said exactly the right thing that I needed to hear. Sorry.
Well, I think you have said exactly all the right things everybody listening to this needs to hear. And I'm so thankful to get to hear some of the stories. And I'm hopeful that this will be one of many cups of tea that we have. But before I let you go, where can people find you? What do you have coming up, and what are you excited about?
Oh gosh. Well, I just signed a contract with the old Arise producer to do a festival next summer in July called Rise and Vibes. I'm very excited about that. I wasn't sure I had another one in me, but I just want to be with the team. I just want to create
Yeah.
that space. Anyone can find me, Ava at mokshajourneys.com, if you're interested in that aspect. My rhythmsanctuary.com website is a little out of date, but I assure you that we are alive and well and meeting every Thursday. That's another way to get a hold of me, or, just meditate and send a signal out.
Yeah.
I think I'll hear it, but um, but what's coming up is the fall harvest. I'm very excited about that. Some time at home. I'm finishing my modules to get my certification as a moksha psilocybin guide. I'm the ceremonial medicine woman, and I really thought that would be all that I had in me to do with moksha journeys. But of course, everyone is just to be so fully embraced on the team. And Jyoti Ma, I mean, having her in my world as a mentor and a teacher and a friend, fast becoming through the times that we've spent together. I want to soak it all up. So every opportunity through moksha is something I want to take advantage of, and just move through and just be with these incredible co-creatives. I mean, it's just, so that's what's really exciting me right now, is that I'm getting through my modules. I'm going to be in a place to take my test and to maybe join on one of those 28 days in Oregon, which is not too far from my son and my grandson. So that'll be fun. And yeah, that's coming up every Thursday. Yeah, all the good things. I got a couple trips in there, but
Yeah.
yeah,
It's
just
so
being home
fascinating.
right now is what's feeling really good. Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that. It's a beautiful time, and I hope that everybody has enjoyed this conversation as much as we have. It's a true pleasure, and I'm really thankful to get to see strategies and hear stories about how to maybe look for meaning in your life, and maybe see that sunshine a little bit brighter, and see the clouds, that silver lining that is holding you tightly. And I don't know, I just think that this is a great conversation. I really appreciate it. And hang on for one briefly afterwards. I want to talk to you briefly afterwards. But ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for hanging out with us today. I hope you have a beautiful weekend. I hope that you realize the blessings in store for you are not only better than you imagine, but better than you can imagine. And that's all we got for today, ladies and gentlemen. Aloha.
So good.
All right.